This video is about multiple people. It's a story that took place in Akron, Ohio. And what had happened was I had previously brought Rickey Smiley into town to do a show back in the early 2000s. And there is a college here in town called Akron U, or the correct name is University of Akron. And they were looking to hire Rickey Smiley to do a May Day weekend celebration for him. And they contacted Lucy Bibby, she was the media person at the comedy club, which was Hilarities at the time. And they knew that Rickey had played that club, so they figured they would get in touch with her and see if she could get Rickey to do their May Day celebration there at the University of Akron. Well, Lucy knew that I was friends with Rickey Smiley, and she knew that I knew him. She figured it would be easier if she just turned it over to me and had me to get in contact with him. And that's what she did. She gave me the information, and I took it over from there. So I contacted the gentleman at Akron U that was interested in hiring Rickey Smiley to do a show there. So I called Rick and I said, hey man, there's some college students. They want to hire you to do a show at Akron U in May as part of one of their May Day weekend festivities. And he asked me, well, what was the date of the show? And I told him, and he said, well, I can't do that date because that's the weekend that I get visitation with my son. And I said, Rick, these dudes got quite a bit of money to spend. You might want to reconsider it. He said, well, what they talking about spending? I said, well, they got a $10,000 budget. He said, well, man, I can get $10,000 any day of the week. So I ain't really worried about the money. He said, I only get to see my son every other week. And that week is when I'm supposed to, pick him up. He said, as far as money go, I make $12,000 to $15,000 a show on the weekend, so I ain't really worried about the money. So I'm thinking to myself, man, this dude is turning down 10 grand. And at the time, man, I wasn't making nowhere near no 10 grand a show, so it was kind of hard for me to relate to that. I mean, I was making maybe $1,200 a show if I was doing like a college or a corporate gig. And as far as one night ago, I wasn't making nowhere near that money, man. I probably could make $1,500 to $1,700 a week at a comedy club. But anyhow, he didn't want to do it, so I called the guys back. I go, look, Rick, he can't do that weekend. So I said, is anybody else y'all might be interested in? So they go, yeah, man, we like to get Sheryl Underwood. So I said, okay. So it just so happened that Sheryl Underwood was due to work in Cleveland at the Cleveland Improv in a couple of weeks. So I went up to the Cleveland Improv to see her show and to also talk to her afterwards, because I knew that Sheryl would interact with the audience after the show. She'd take pictures, sell some merchandise, and she would also, kind of talk and just socialize a little bit. So after the show, I kind of hung around and watched her take some pictures and talk to some of the people after the show. And I got a chance to get up to her and I said, hey, I'm John King. I'm a comedian. I'm interested in hiring you to do a comedy show. Well, right off the bat, she referred me to what she called her road manager, because she didn't want to talk about doing comedy or that kind of stuff at the moment, because she was tired of with some of her fans. And plus, a lot of time people come up to you and they talk about business and hiring you and they be full of shit. And she didn't know me, so She probably figured I was just one of those people. So she put me off on her, what was supposed to be her road manager. So I got his number and stuff. And I called him. And I was like, look, I'm trying to see if I can get Sheryl to do a gig for me. And he was like, man, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not Sheryl's road manager. He said, I'm like her bodyguard. He said, I'm from Pittsburgh. Whenever she's in the area, she'll call me up and she'll hire me to be her bodyguard while I'm here. He said, I don't book no stuff for her. He said, but what I can do is I can give you the number and information to her manager who takes care of all of that stuff. So I get the number and I call up the management team, which was out of LA. I don't remember the name of the agency that was representing her at the time. I don't want to call out a name and it's the wrong name, but it was one of the big ones. I called them up and I was like, I'm trying to hire Sheryl Underwood to do a comedy show on a Saturday night in Akron, Ohio. And they was like, well, let's see what her schedule is like. And they, within a couple of seconds or whatever, they after looking over the schedule, they said, well, she's already booked with an engagement on that day. And so it's not going to be able to happen. He said, but would you be interested in getting Bruce? He said, because I manage Bruce and Sheryl also. And I was like, well, look, let me get back with you and I'll see if the people who I'm trying to set this date up for and see if they'd be interested. So I called the guys back that was trying to hire, a comedian. They originally wanted Rick, but I called them back. I go, look, I can't get Sheryl either. I say, but would you be interested in having Bruce do the show? And they was like, oh, hell yeah, man. I said, yeah, we would love to have Bruce. I said, okay. So I called the people back the next day, or it might even been the same day. I called Sheryl and Bruce management team back, and I said that, yeah, they'll be satisfied with having Bruce to do the gig. So I said, well, how much would it cost for a guy like Bruce? And they said, well, it'd be like $8,000. I go, well, cool, but that's within their budget. So the management team was kind enough to inform me that they was like, look, he said, if you're just trying to hire a comic for somebody else and it's not for you personally, I would suggest that you let those people do the contract work. He said, because once we do this contract, and if for any reason something happened that they try to pull out, you're going to be responsible for the $8,000 because you can't just pull out like that. He said, plus you're going to be responsible for the plane tickets and you're going to be responsible for the hotel rooms. He said, all of that stuff is going to be your responsibility if something were to happen. In other words, he was saying if I buy a plane ticket or book a hotel room and then all of a sudden they don't do it, that'll fall all up on myself. And I'm like, well, I don't really want that responsibility because I wasn't going to make any money from hiring Bruce. So I said, well, what should I do? He said, well, what you do is you should have the people that actually want him, have them to do the paperwork and fill out the contract. So I said, cool, that's what I'll do. So I called the gentleman and I told him that here's the information and the contact. Just call them, call the agency, and they'll set everything up for you. So they did, and they got Bruce, and the event went off. And he obviously got all the money and everything, was real smooth. So about a week later, I got back in contact with him. And I told him, I say, we had agreed that if I would set everything up, that you would pay a 10%, booking fee. So I said, he made $8,000, so 10%, that's $800. So when can I expect to get my $800? Well, the young guy said, "Well, man, look," he said, we did all the paperwork. We signed the contract. We had to set up you know, the money for the plane ticket and the hotel room." He said, "You really didn't do nothing, so we don't think you owe us no money. I mean, we owe you any money." And I was like, "Well, that ain't what we agreed on." He said, "Well, yeah, we agreed on you hiring Bruce, but we ended up doing it, so we're not going to pay you anything." So I said, "Well, man, I don't think that's right." They said, "Well, we'll tell you what. We'll get back with you tomorrow. We need to talk it over with some of the other guys." So I said, "Okay." So, of course, man, tomorrow came, and the next day came, and the next day came. They never called me back. So I called them back, and when I did, the phone number had been shut off. They said this number, however the prompt comes up, to where they say this number is no longer in service, and there's no further information. So I was like, all right. I said, okay, and I'm just gonna have to accept it, man, because they were right. They did all the work. The only thing I did was gave them a contact number, and I said it is what it is. So I didn't pursue it anymore after that. So that's my story about uh, University of Akron, Rickey Smiley, Sheryl Underwood, Bruce, and me not getting any money for my efforts. But it was another learning experience. All right, that's it for me on this story. See y'all down the road. Take care.